All right, today I'm going to talk about Myanmar's media, the history, a little bit of the history there, and how that's kind of played out with the coup. So, if we're talking about censorship in the media, censorship has been, if we look at the recent history in Myanmar, censorship has kind of been the norm, and it wasn't until 2012, 2013, this sort of time, that things started to loosen up. So it used to be so restricted that if you, if you wrote for the local newspapers or whatever these magazines were on the TV, you'd have to go through a process to make sure through this like government agency to make sure it passes there, like that it's okay with them. And what that actually made people do, and I'm sure you can understand, is that the people who were in the media would be self-censoring. Because if you know that you are going to have to be, whatever you say is going to have to be okayed by this, say, government agency, then you would start changing what you would write because you know that you have to be changing it to whatever they want anyways. And that actually became a problem, that when the restrictions and the censorship was removed, more or less, 5, 6, 7-ish years ago, that because people had been self-censoring, the media had been self-censoring for so long, that it took them a while to kind of learn to not do that, I suppose. So that's a little bit of a brief history. So up until recently, there was a lot of censorship. In the last few years, less, certainly a lot less, but there was starting to be some crackdown stuff. Anyways, as for the coup, the media now, instead of before where it was like newspapers and TV broadcasts, some that would be coming in from outside of the country, in the last few years, the internet has been massive for that, right? And a lot of the main organizations are massive on Facebook and YouTube and things like that. So when the military takes over, one of the first things that they did was try to clamp down on the media. And within the first couple of weeks, one of the new things that the military regime passed was that you couldn't, they were sending information out to the different media organizations saying, you're not allowed to refer to us as like the military junta. You're not allowed to refer to it as the military coup, these sorts of things. And media organizations, for the vast majority of them, they're just like not on board with that. And when the military would host these press conferences, with them being the government, a lot of the media organizations just didn't show up, as other ways to kind of like position themselves away from the military and things like that. But it certainly wasn't going to be too long before the military really started to crack down on that. And in the last couple of weeks, now we're so if we're talking kind of like mid-March, early March, mid-March, the military started to send some orders for these media organizations to shut down. And within days, the major newspapers, the major kind of like private newspapers, I suppose, in the country, and the organizations, they all shut down. Some of them just like completely removed all of their stuff and themselves from Facebook. And other organizations, they just shut down their local offices, and some are reporting from outside of the country. So there's local journalists and photojournalists and whatnot, but the actual stuff is coming from outside of the country where it can't be controlled in such a way. So the censorship stuff is back on. Shutdowns have all happened. As of this moment, which is March 20th, more than 50 journalists have been arrested, including some foreign journalists. And some, a couple of dozen, are still under detention of some sort. Charged or not charged, it doesn't really even matter. The Irrawaddy, which is a long-time organization, just in the last week, they were sued for reporting on these. There were 70 doctors that were arrested as part of the CDM movement, and they are being sued by the military regime because they reported that some military officials were trying to ask for $9,000 for bail to let these 70 doctors out, which of course super duper shady, not all that unexpected, but the reporting on it was the problem here. what that's going to mean for the future. So now there's very few of the regular newspapers that are there. The state-controlled newspaper, is complete BS, and same with the local TV stuff. Now, I would say that the vast majority of people in Myanmar know all that stuff, know that what's on the TV that they can't trust, know that what they read in the kind of like the government-run newspaper, that they can't trust that stuff either. But it's getting to be harder and harder for good information to get out there, and we're certainly seeing that too. In the links below, I will post a couple of excellent media organizations. If you want to donate to them, that will help keep them reporting in these really challenging times.